I can see demand for commodities decreasing in the near term. In my heart of hearts, I think we're going to have a recession. I'm not an economist, but I don't think that the rules of economics or the rules of cyclicality have been ruled out. I think that beginning in 2022, that we've begun a very different epoch than the one that existed in the period 1982 to 2022. I think we had 40 years of benign economic climate. The consequence of that is that we enjoyed the benefits of workplace inclusion. Again, I don't want to sound too woke. We certainly enjoyed lower interest rates, and we enjoyed an internationalism. We enjoyed the urbanization of 650 million Chinese, for example. I think that that period is over. I'm not saying that the world's going to go to hell in a handbasket, but certainly the period of declining real interest rates is over. I think increasingly the world is setting up into nationalistic economic blocs that will attempt to serve the self-interest of politicians inside these blocs rather than humankind as a whole. So I think that the climate is going to be less benign than it has been. And I also think that recessions serve the purpose of reducing business confidence and reintroducing common sense. I think, too, that although this hasn't been a correct assumption in the last 2 years, that a rising cost of capital will impact investing, and the rising cost of capital will devalue the value of income streams like dividends. So at the same time that the cost of capital through debt increases, that capitalized equities values through dividends goes down. I'm not trying to say that we're going to have a stock market crash. There is so much cash on the sidelines, such cash in private hands, that the stock market doesn't necessarily need to decline. But I think you might see some leadership shifts in the market, and you may continue to see stock market declines. But I do believe in my heart of hearts that we're due for at least a slowdown in the general economy. That isn't to say that I've stopped investing. A person who's a pessimist at age 70 does not start a bank. I think the future of humankind is wonderful, but I think there's probably a reckoning between here and there. And certainly if you look at the free cash balances in my personal account, you'll see that I've been overall playing defense and building up fairly large cash balances. It is entirely likely that a stock I buy today for, let's say a speculative stock, a stock that I buy today for $1, that I think is likely to be worth $3 or $4, goes to 60 or 80 cents first. It's happened dozens of times in my career, literally dozens of times in my career. And it's sort of, I don't mean to say it's irrelevant, but I look at two sides of the coin. I can see demand for commodities decreasing in the near term as a consequence of a recession. But if I look in the longer term, 4 to 5 years, demographics, 8 billion people on Earth, urbanizing increases demand, and I see supply inexorably declining. We have, as a species, underinvested for 30 years in the productive capacity around a whole range of extractive commodities, copper as an example. You have a circumstance where the productive capacity, Christ, Carrie, it's as old as me, long past its prime. I think, too, that the mini boom that we had in capital raisings, both in the 2008 to 2011 timeframe, and then again in the 2018, 19, and 2020 timeframe, that part of it which went in the ground is beginning to bear fruit now. I think we're coming into the beginnings of a new of a new exploration cycle. I have noted in prior cycles that it takes about a decade for the industry to employ new technology or go into new places and get results. And we have been now in this mini exploration cycle for 10 or 12 years. And I'm beginning to see exploration results around the world that attract my attention. The idea of a central bank digital currency, particularly if you combine it with artificial intelligence and social scoring, the way the Chinese are doing, with a central bank digital currency as opposed to with cash, or better yet, gold, if they don't like the way you think and act, they can cancel your money. The government can get angry at me, but if they can't find me, and I have a bunch of cash in my pocket, they can't do much to penalize me. But with a central bank digital currency, they could say Rick's money is no longer. And you've seen some of my posts on social media. I'm afraid they might do just exactly that. Yeah. Anything that gives the government more control over my own wealth, my own behavior, and the free interaction between members of society, I think is a very dangerous thing. I had hoped in my 20s that the advent of technology would give people access to more freedom and less reliance on government. But this central bank digital currency is probably the single scariest development in my lifetime. The only thing that gives me cause for confidence is that there's 450 million guns in private circulation in the United States. And we have a history going back in time of, if you push us too far, we push back. And my hope is that if the big thinkers think about the possible reaction of Americans when they've been pushed too far, that they will be encouraged to prudence, if not by their faith in the American populace, then by the existence of 450 million means of self-protection. My suspicion is that we have had a 15-year lurch to the left. And we've had a 15-year lurch, too, away from common sense into sort of woke speech. And my suspicion about that is, and I don't want to sound politically correct myself, but both the man and the woman on the street are beginning to think enough is enough. This is silly. I don't mind reading cartoons, but I'm sick of living in a cartoon. And I have no particular interest in having my family's future determined by a bunch of big thinkers who don't know how to define a woman, as an example, or people who believe that they have the right to distribute your property as you, as opposed to they. And I'm actually very heartened. I do a lot of mentoring of young people, as I think you know, Carrie, through organizations like Students for Liberty. I mentor a group of minority ex-offenders in the United States. And I need to say that probably in the last year, maybe my audience is self-selecting, but basically every young person's group that I talk to about these circumstances looks at both me and the world in dismay and says that there's no part of common sense that's in evidence, either with the discussions that we're having as a society or the way that we govern our finances. And I see that as extremely positive. For 20 years, they've ignored this lurch towards socialism. They've ignored this lurch towards woke public speech. And increasingly, the young people who the big thinkers purport to represent in these struggles, the very young people that the struggles are suggested to benefit are saying, this is silly. This is insane. These proposals ignore common sense.